February 14th, 1945. Hürtgen Forest, Germany. 0347 hours. The temperature hovered at -8 degrees Celsius when Staff Sergeant William J. Carter, United States Army, 28th Infantry Division, 110th Infantry Regiment, slipped through the shattered remnants of what reconnaissance maps identified as Coordinate Grid 294518, approximately 2 kilometers southeast of the German border town of Schmidt. The forest floor was frozen solid beneath 20 centimeters of crusted snow. Carter moved in deliberate intervals, 3 steps, pause, visual sweep, 3 more steps. A rhythm developed across 4 months of continuous frontline deployment in what American infantrymen had begun calling the meat grinder. Don't forget to follow the channel and like the video. Carter carried a Springfield M19903A4 sniper rifle, serial number 3407319, manufactured at Remington Arms in September 1943. The weapon featured a Weaver 330C telescopic sight with 2.5x magnification, modest by contemporary standards, but valued for its reliability in sub-zero conditions where more sophisticated optics frequently fogged or froze. The rifle's effective range extended to 800 meters under optimal conditions. In the Hürtgen Forest, where visibility rarely exceeded 50 meters due to dense coniferous growth, morning fog, and the omnipresent haze of cordite and burning wood, effective engagement distances contracted to between 150 and 300 meters. Carter had logged 23 confirmed kills since November 16, 1944. 14 of those eliminations involved German officers, identified by binoculars and targeting priority established in divisional intelligence briefings that emphasized disrupting enemy command structures. The Hürtgen Forest offensive, initiated on September 19, 1944, represented one of the longest sustained ground operations conducted by American forces in the European theater. Spanning approximately 140 square kilometers of heavily wooded defensible terrain along the German-Belgian frontier, the forest provided Wehrmacht defenders with natural fortifications, concealed movement corridors, and interlocking fields of fire that negated much of the American advantage in armor and artillery. By mid-February 1945, the 28th Infantry Division had sustained casualties exceeding 6,000 men, representing more than 80% of the division's initial combat strength. Replacements arrived weekly, many with less than 6 weeks of infantry training. Carter, at 26 years old with 8 months of European combat experience, qualified as a veteran. Intelligence reports delivered during the February 13th evening briefing indicated that elements of the German 272nd Volksgrenadier Division had established a regimental command post in a fortified farmhouse complex approximately 1,400 meters east of the American forward line. Signals intercepts suggested the presence of at least one field-grade officer coordinating defensive operations across a 2-kilometer sector. Battalion Intelligence Officer Captain Harold Edmonds assessed that eliminating this command element could disrupt defensive cohesion sufficiently to facilitate a limited American advance, scheduled for February 16th. Carter received authorization for a deep reconnaissance and target of opportunity mission. He departed the American forward positions at 0230 hours, accompanied by Private First Class Leonard Kozlowski, a Polish-American radio man from Detroit who carried an SCR-300 backpack radio weighing 32 pounds. The approach required crossing no man's land under conditions of near total darkness. The moon, 3 days past full, provided intermittent illumination through gaps in the forest canopy. Carter navigated using a prismatic compass and pace count, techniques drilled during his pre-deployment training at Camp A.P. Hill, Virginia, in early 1944. German defensive doctrine emphasized aggressive patrolling at night, and Carter's route intersected known enemy patrol paths at 3 points. At 0315 hours, approximately 800 meters from the American line, Carter and Kozlowski detected movement 40 meters to their north. The distinctive sound of boot leather compressing frozen snow in rhythmic cadence. Carter signaled Kozlowski to freeze in place. Both men assumed prone positions behind a fallen oak, weapons oriented toward the sound. Through his rifle scope, Carter observed 3 German soldiers moving west in single file, each carrying carabiner 98K rifles. The lead soldier wore the distinctive M43 field cap of the Wehrmacht. Carter allowed the patrol to pass without engagement. His mission parameters specified reconnaissance and high-value targeting. Engaging a routine patrol would compromise his position and abort the operation. By 0340 hours, Carter had advanced to within 400 meters of the suspected German command post. Terrain analysis conducted from aerial reconnaissance photographs suggested the farmhouse occupied elevated ground with clear approaches from 3 sides. A tactically sound position that provided observation and fields of fire, but complicated covert approach. Carter selected an observation position in a dense thicket of evergreen saplings, approximately 280 meters northwest of the farmhouse. From this position, he maintained a slight elevation advantage and a direct line of sight to the farmhouse's southern and western facades. Kozlowski established the radio antenna and confirmed communications capability with battalion headquarters. Carter settled into a prone firing position, adjusting his rifle's scope and conducting a visual survey of the target area. The farmhouse was a 2-story stone structure with a slate roof, typical of German agricultural construction. Through his scope, Carter identified sandbag emplacements at the ground floor windows and what appeared to be a machine gun position, likely an MG-42, covering the southern approach. Smoke rose from a chimney on the east side of the building, indicating active occupation and suggesting interior heat sources that would create thermal gradients affecting long-range shooting. Carter noted 3 vehicles parked in a covered shed adjacent to the farmhouse. 2 Kübelwagen light utility vehicles and what appeared to be a larger transport truck, possibly an Opel Blitz. The presence of multiple vehicles supported intelligence assessments regarding command post functionality. At 04:02 hours, Carter observed his first personnel movement. A German soldier emerged from the farmhouse's southern entrance, walked approximately 15 meters to a latrine trench, and remained there for approximately 90 seconds before returning to the building. The soldier wore no rank insignia visible at this distance. Carter recorded the movement in a small waterproof notebook, noting the time and location. Establishing patterns of personnel movement constituted essential reconnaissance data. At 04:38 hours, as dawn approached, activity at the farmhouse increased. Carter observed 4 soldiers exit the building in succession, each carrying weapons and equipment. 2 began conducting what appeared to be a perimeter inspection, walking the tree line approximately 50 meters from the farmhouse. Through his scope, Carter noted that 1 soldier wore the shoulder boards of an unteroffizier, a non-commissioned officer. The patrol moved methodically but without apparent urgency, suggesting routine rather than alert status. Carter maintained his concealed position, controlling his breathing to minimize vapor condensation visible in the freezing air. At 05:02 hours, first light began penetrating the forest canopy. Carter's window of opportunity was narrowing. Increased visibility favored German defensive observation, and remaining in position after full daylight invited detection. At 05:09 hours, the farmhouse door opened again. Carter adjusted his scope's focus. An officer emerged, identifiable by a peaked visor cap and a leather greatcoat, distinct from standard enlisted field dress. Through the scope's reticle, Carter observed shoulder boards indicating the rank of Hauptmann, equivalent to an American captain. The officer stood on the farmhouse steps for approximately 20 seconds, surveying the perimeter. He lit a cigarette using a lighter, the small flame briefly visible. Then he turned and re-entered the building. Carter recorded the observation. A Hauptmann likely served as company commander, or possibly regimental operations officer. Eliminating this individual would degrade German command effectiveness within the sector. However, Carter faced a tactical calculus. Taking the shot would reveal his position, necessitating immediate withdrawal under likely pursuit. The shot would also alert the German garrison, potentially compromising the larger American offensive scheduled for February 16th. Carter consulted with Kozlowski via hand signals, then requested radio communication with battalion headquarters to confirm engagement authority. The radio exchange, conducted in whispered brevity code, required 4 minutes. Battalion granted discretionary engagement authority contingent on Carter's tactical assessment of success probability and withdrawal feasibility. Captain Edmonds's transmitted message concluded, "Your call, Sergeant. If you take the shot, make it count. Don't forget to follow the channel and like the video." Carter resumed his observation position. The waiting, characteristic of sniper operations, extended through the next hour. At 0621 hours, the Hauptmann emerged again, this time accompanied by another officer, younger, wearing the single pip of a lieutenant, equivalent to a second lieutenant. Both officers stood on the farmhouse steps, engaged in conversation. The Hauptmann gestured toward the western tree line, possibly discussing defensive dispositions. The range was 283 meters. Carter estimated this using his scope's mil-dot reticle and the known dimensions of the doorway. Wind conditions were minimal, approximately 5 kilometers per hour from the northwest, requiring negligible hold-off. Temperature had risen to -5 degrees Celsius, reducing air density slightly and marginally increasing bullet drop. Carter chambered a round, a 30.06 Springfield cartridge, 150 grain M2 ball ammunition. The rifle's barrel had been cold-soaked to ambient temperature across 3 hours of stationary observation, eliminating thermal shift variables that could affect point of impact. Carter regulated his breathing into a 4-count cycle. Inhale, exhale, pause, fire during the respiratory pause to minimize thoracic movement. He aligned the scope's crosshair on the Hauptmann's upper chest, center mass, accounting for the target's winter clothing, which added approximately 3 centimeters of padding that could affect terminal ballistics. At 0624 hours, Carter squeezed the trigger. The rifle's discharge produced a sharp crack that echoed through the forest. The 150 grain projectile, traveling at approximately 853 meters per second, covered the 283-meter distance in roughly 0.36 seconds. Carter observed the impact through his scope. The Hauptmann staggered backward, his right hand moving instinctively toward his chest, before he collapsed onto the steps. The lieutenant dropped immediately into a crouch, then scrambled back into the farmhouse. Within seconds, shouting erupted from inside the building. Carter did not remain to observe further. He and Kozlowski executed their pre-planned withdrawal, moving west-northwest at a rapid but controlled pace, using terrain masking and the dense forest to break line of sight with the farmhouse. Behind them, Carter heard the distinctive sound of the MG-42 opening fire. A high-rate cyclic burst, approximately 1,200 rounds per minute, tearing through the forest canopy in suppressive sweeps. The German defenders were firing blind, saturating probable sniper positions with volume fire. Carter counted approximately 15 seconds of sustained fire before the machine gun ceased. By that point, he and Kozlowski had covered nearly 100 meters and were moving through a depression that provided defilade from direct observation. The withdrawal consumed 73 minutes. Carter and Kozlowski navigated back toward American lines using an offset route, avoiding their approach path to minimize the risk of encountering German pursuit elements. At 0737 hours, they crossed into American-controlled territory, challenged by a forward listening post manned by soldiers from Baker Company. Carter identified himself, provided authentication codes, and proceeded to the battalion command post for debriefing. Captain Edmonds conducted the debriefing at 0830 hours. Carter provided a detailed after-action account, including sketches of the farmhouse layout, vehicle positions, and estimated German force strength. Edmonds confirmed that signals intelligence had detected a surge in German radio traffic beginning at approximately 0630 hours, consistent with a significant disruption to command structures in the sector. Post-mission analysis would later indicate that the officer Carter eliminated was Hauptmann Friedrich Wolff, commanding officer of the 2nd Company, 981st Grenadier Regiment, 272nd Volksgrenadier Division. Wolff's elimination created a temporary command vacuum that contributed to reduced German defensive coordination during the American attack on February 16th. This engagement represented one iteration within a broader pattern of targeted elimination operations that Carter conducted throughout the winter of 1944-45. His methodology combined patience, fieldcraft, and calculated risk acceptance. He did not operate as a lone wolf marksman. Rather, he functioned within established infantry doctrine, coordinating with intelligence assets, maintaining radio communication with command elements, and adhering to mission parameters defined by battalion-level planning. The operational environment in which Carter operated, the Hürtgen Forest in winter, presented extreme physical and psychological demands. Historian Charles B. MacDonald, in his official U.S. Army history of the campaign, described the Hürtgen as a place where the forest itself was the enemy. Temperatures frequently dropped below -10 degrees Celsius. Soldiers suffered frostbite, trench foot, and hypothermia at rates that rivaled combat casualties. The dense forest canopy negated air superiority and limited the effectiveness of American artillery. German defenders dug into prepared positions, employed mines, booby traps, and interlocking fields of fire that inflicted disproportionate casualties on attacking American forces. Within this environment, snipers like Carter provided one of the few asymmetric advantages available to American commanders. Eliminating German officers disrupted the Wehrmacht's hierarchical command structure, which relied heavily on centralized decision-making and vertical chains of authority. A single well-placed shot could degrade the combat effectiveness of an entire company or battalion for hours or days, buying time for American forces to exploit tactical opportunities. Carter's background prior to military service provided limited indication of his eventual effectiveness as a sniper. Born in 1918 in rural Kentucky, Carter grew up hunting deer and small game in the Appalachian foothills, experience that developed marksmanship fundamentals and fieldcraft, but did not inherently prepare him for the psychological demands of deliberate human targeting. He enlisted in the U.S. Army in March 1943, underwent basic training at Fort Knox, and was assigned to the 28th Infantry Division. He attended sniper training at a specialized school established in Tidworth, England, in August 1944, where he received instruction in range estimation, ballistics, camouflage, and stalking techniques adapted from British sniper doctrine developed during World War I and refined in North Africa. Carter's first confirmed kill occurred on November 18, 1944, during the early phases of the Hürtgen offensive. The target was a German machine gun crewman, positioned approximately 220 meters from Carter's position. Carter's after-action report noted that he experienced significant tunnel vision and elevated heart rate immediately following the shot, physiological responses consistent with acute stress. Over subsequent weeks, Carter adapted psychologically, developing what military psychologists would later term emotional compartmentalization, a cognitive strategy enabling repeated engagement with life and death decision-making without incapacitating psychological distress. By February 1945, Carter had refined his operational approach into a systematic methodology. He conducted pre-mission reconnaissance using aerial photographs and intelligence summaries. He selected observation positions based on fields of fire, concealment, and withdrawal routes. He coordinated with forward observers and artillery liaison officers to ensure deconfliction with supporting fires. He maintained detailed logs of environmental conditions, target behavior, and shot outcomes, creating a personal database that informed subsequent engagements. Carter's success rate, defined as confirmed kills per engagement, approximated 68%, calculated across 34 recorded engagements. This figure aligned with contemporary data from other American snipers operating in the European theater. British and Soviet snipers, operating under different doctrinal frameworks and environmental conditions, reported higher success rates, but direct comparisons remained complicated by variations in confirmation methodologies and target selection criteria. The psychological cost of sustained sniper operations remains difficult to quantify. Carter's personal correspondence, preserved in the National Archives, provides fragmentary insight. In a letter to his sister dated March 3, 1945, Carter wrote, "I try not to think about it too much. The job needs doing, and I do it. At night sometimes I see their faces through the scope, but then I think about our boys who won't get shot because I did my job, and I sleep a little better." This statement reflects a coping mechanism identified in subsequent psychological research. Moral justification rooted in utilitarian calculus. Carter rationalized his actions by framing them within a defensive narrative. His eliminations prevented greater harm to American personnel. Whether this rationalization provided genuine psychological relief or merely suppressed unresolved trauma remains unknowable without direct clinical assessment, which Carter never underwent. The operational tempo in the Hürtgen Forest escalated through late February and early March 1945. Carter conducted 11 additional missions between February 15th and March 10th, achieving 7 confirmed kills. 4 of these eliminations involved officers. 3 involved technical specialists identified through equipment or behavior. For example, a Wehrmacht forward observer coordinating artillery fire, identifiable by his use of optical range-finding equipment and radio communications. On March 7, 1945, American forces finally secured the Hürtgen Forest, having suffered approximately 33,000 total casualties, killed, wounded, missing, and non-battle injuries since September 1944. German casualties approximated 28,000. The exchange ratio, typically favoring defenders in forested terrain, reflected the attritional character of the campaign. The forest itself bore the scars. Thousands of trees shattered by artillery, entire sections reduced to splintered stumps and cratered earth. Carter survived the Hürtgen Forest. He did not survive the war unscathed. On April 11, 1945, during operations near the town of Wiesbaden, Germany, Carter was engaged by German forces while withdrawing from a sniper position. A burst of automatic weapons fire struck him in the left leg and left shoulder. Field medics stabilized him, and he was evacuated through the medical chain to a field hospital in France. His combat service concluded on that date. He received the Silver Star for gallantry in action, the Bronze Star with V device for valor, and the Purple Heart. His official citation noted, "Staff Sergeant Carter's courage under fire and unwavering dedication to duty resulted in the elimination of numerous high-value enemy personnel, significantly contributing to the success of his unit's combat operations." Carter returned to the United States in July 1945. He underwent surgery at Walter Reed Army Hospital to remove shrapnel fragments from his shoulder, fragments that would remain embedded in his body for the remainder of his life. He was honorably discharged in September 1945 with a disability rating of 30%. The war ended. Carter's war did not. Walter Reed Army Hospital, Washington, D.C., September 22, 1945. Staff Sergeant William J. Carter sat in the Discharge Processing Center, reviewing paperwork that formally terminated his military service. The war in Europe had ended on May 8, 1945. The Pacific War concluded on August 15th, following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Carter's discharge came amid a massive demobilization. By December 1945, the U.S. Army would reduce its strength from 8.3 million personnel to approximately 1.5 million. Carter received his final pay settlement, medical documentation, and a train ticket to Louisville, Kentucky. He departed Washington on September 24th, carrying a single duffel bag containing his personal effects and a .45 caliber M1911 pistol he had purchased as surplus military property for $12. The transition from combat operations to civilian life presented challenges that military planners had not adequately anticipated. The U.S. government established the Veterans Administration to provide medical care, vocational training, and educational benefits under the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, commonly known as the GI Bill. However, these programs addressed physical rehabilitation and economic reintegration. They did not systematically address psychological trauma. In 1945, the psychiatric profession had not yet developed diagnostic frameworks for what would later be termed post-traumatic stress disorder. Veterans experiencing anxiety, depression, nightmares, and hypervigilance were often diagnosed with psychoneurosis or combat fatigue, conditions viewed as temporary and self-resolving. Carter's medical records from Walter Reed, preserved in his Veterans Administration file, document persistent insomnia, nervousness, and what the attending physician described as exaggerated startle response. The physician prescribed phenobarbital, a barbiturate sedative commonly used to treat anxiety in the 1940s. Carter reportedly took the medication sporadically and discontinued use within 6 months due to what he described in a follow-up appointment as making me feel foggy. Carter returned to his family's property in Harlan County, Kentucky in October 1945. He attempted to resume the life he had left in 1943, working on the family farm, hunting, engaging with his community. His younger brother, Thomas Carter, later recalled in a 1989 oral history interview, "Red came back different. He was quieter. He'd sit on the porch for hours, just looking at the hills. Sometimes you'd say something to him and he wouldn't hear you. Other times a car backfiring would make him jump like he'd been shot. He didn't talk about the war much. Only time he said anything was once when I asked him what it was like over there. He looked at me and said, 'It was a job that needed doing.' That was all." Carter married in 1947. His wife, Margaret Ann Sullivan, was a school teacher from a neighboring county. They had 2 children, a daughter born in 1948 and a son in 1950. Carter worked intermittently in coal mining, logging, and as a mechanic at a Ford dealership in Harlan. According to employment records, he held 11 different jobs between 1945 and 1960. None lasting more than 2 years. This pattern of employment instability appeared frequently among World War II combat veterans, particularly those who had experienced prolonged frontline exposure. Carter's VA medical records document multiple appointments between 1950 and 1965 for what physicians described as chronic pain syndrome related to his war injuries. The shrapnel fragments embedded in his left shoulder caused persistent inflammation and limited range of motion. By 1955, Carter was receiving disability compensation at a 50% rating, increased from the initial 30% classification. The increased rating reflected both physical deterioration and the inclusion of psychoneurotic disorder as a service-connected condition, a diagnostic category that encompassed what would later be recognized as PTSD. Carter's case was not exceptional. A 1950 study conducted by the National Research Council examined psychological outcomes among 1,200 World War II combat veterans. The study found that approximately 37% reported persistent anxiety, 23% experienced recurrent nightmares related to combat experiences, and 41% described difficulty maintaining stable employment. Veterans who had served in high-intensity combat roles, infantry, armor, special operations, and notably snipers, exhibited higher rates of psychological distress than those in support roles. The study concluded, the psychological cost of combat cannot be measured solely in casualty statistics. Many men who survived physically carry wounds invisible to medical examination, but no less debilitating in their long-term effects. The specific psychological burden associated with sniper operations emerged as a subject of military psychiatric research in the 1950s. Unlike conventional infantry combat, where soldiers engaged targets at longer ranges and often could not clearly observe the effects of their fire, sniper operations required deliberate, close-range observation of individual human beings, followed by intentional killing, followed by direct observation of death. This sequence created psychological conditions distinct from other combat experiences. A 1958 study published in the Journal of Military Medicine examined psychiatric outcomes among 83 American snipers who had served in World War II and Korea. The study found that snipers exhibited higher rates of what researchers termed moral injury, psychological distress resulting from actions that violated personal ethical codes, even when those actions were legally and militarily justified. The study noted, the sniper observes his target as an individual. He may see the man's face, his gestures, his humanity, and then he kills him. This personalized killing appears to impose psychological costs distinct from the depersonalized violence of artillery or aerial bombardment. Carter never participated in formal psychiatric research. His understanding of his own psychological state remains documented only through fragmentary personal correspondence and family recollections. In a letter to a fellow veteran dated 1956, Carter wrote, "Sometimes I wonder if what I did was right. I know it was necessary. We were at war, and I was following orders, doing my duty. But I remember their faces, all of them. I don't think that ever goes away." This statement reflects a cognitive dissonance common among combat veterans, the simultaneous recognition of moral justification, duty, necessity, lawful orders, and moral burden, the irreversible taking of human life. Reconciling this dissonance constitutes one of the enduring challenges of post-combat psychological adjustment. Doctrinal evolution, American sniper employment in World War II. The American military's approach to sniper operations in World War II represented a significant departure from European practices, particularly those of the Soviet Union and Germany, which had developed sophisticated sniper doctrines during the interwar period and refined them through extensive combat experience on the Eastern Front. The Soviet Union institutionalized sniper training in the 1930s, establishing dedicated schools and integrating snipers into standard rifle division structures. By 1945, the Red Army had trained approximately 428,000 snipers, both male and female, who accounted for an estimated 500,000 to 800,000 German casualties. Soviet doctrine emphasized mass employment, with snipers organized into specialized units operating under centralized control. The most effective Soviet snipers achieved extraordinary tallies. Vasily Zaitsev recorded 225 confirmed kills. Lyudmila Pavlichenko achieved 309. These numbers reflected operational conditions on the Eastern Front: static defensive positions, prolonged sieges, and target-rich environments, as well as Soviet confirmation methodologies that differed from American standards. Germany developed sniper doctrine based on World War I experience and expanded it through combined arms integration. German snipers operated primarily at the platoon and company level, providing precision fire support for infantry maneuvers. The Wehrmacht equipped snipers with high-quality optics, including the Zeiss Zielvier 4X scope and later the Zeiss Zielsex 6X, which provided superior magnification compared to American equipment. German doctrine emphasized concealment, patience, and selective engagement, principles evident in the defensive operations Carter encountered in the Hürtgen Forest. The United States entered World War II without a comprehensive sniper doctrine. American military culture, shaped by experiences in World War I and the interwar period, emphasized firepower and mobility over precision engagement. The Springfield M1903 rifle, standard issue during World War I, remained in service as a sniper weapon. But systematic sniper training programs did not exist at the outbreak of war in 1941. The U.S. Marine Corps, drawing on experience in jungle warfare during the Pacific campaigns, developed sniper capabilities earlier and more comprehensively than the Army. Marine Corps sniper doctrine emphasized individual marksmanship, fieldcraft, and integration with reconnaissance elements. The U.S. Army's sniper program emerged reactively, driven by operational necessity in Europe. The first formal Army sniper school opened in England in 1944, modeled on British practices. Training lasted approximately 2 weeks and covered basic marksmanship, range estimation, camouflage, and movement techniques. Graduates like Carter received Springfield M1903A4 rifles and were assigned to infantry regiments, typically 1 or 2 snipers per company. This decentralized structure contrasted with Soviet mass employment and German integrated support models. American sniper effectiveness in Europe varied significantly across units and operational environments. In dense terrain like the Hürtgen Forest, Normandy hedgerows, and Italian mountains, snipers provided valuable capabilities, disrupting enemy command structures and suppressing movement. In open terrain where American armor and artillery could be brought to bear effectively, sniper contributions remained marginal. The U.S. Army never developed comprehensive metrics for assessing sniper effectiveness, making systematic evaluation difficult. Available records suggest that American snipers in Europe averaged between 15 and 40 confirmed kills per individual throughout the war, significantly lower than Soviet or Finnish snipers, but reflecting different operational contexts, confirmation standards, and employment durations. The Pacific Theater presented different conditions. Japanese defensive doctrine, emphasizing concealment, prepared positions, and willingness to accept high casualties, created target-rich environments where American snipers proved highly effective. Marine Corps snipers operating on islands such as Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu, and Okinawa recorded higher casualty tallies than their European counterparts. Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock, though he served in Vietnam rather than World War II, exemplified the Marine Corps sniper tradition that originated in the Pacific campaigns. Carter's 23 confirmed kills place him within the median range of American Army snipers in the European theater. His emphasis on officer targeting aligned with intelligence priorities, but diverged from some contemporary sniper practices that prioritized easier, higher-volume targeting. The decision to prioritize high-value targets over casualty maximization reflected doctrinal guidance, emphasizing disruption of enemy command and control. An approach consistent with American military culture's focus on technological and organizational superiority over attrition. Post-war analysis of World War II sniper operations identified several key lessons that influenced subsequent doctrine. First, sniper effectiveness correlated strongly with integration into intelligence collection and targeting processes. Snipers operating without systematic intelligence support achieved significantly lower effectiveness ratios. Second, sniper survivability depended critically on disciplined fire control. Snipers who engaged multiple targets from a single position suffered higher casualty rates than those who limited engagements and withdrew immediately. Third, psychological screening and support proved essential for sustaining sniper effectiveness across extended deployments. Snipers exhibited higher rates of psychological breakdown than conventional infantrymen when such support was absent. These lessons informed the development of U.S. military sniper programs during the Korean War, 1950-1953, and later the Vietnam War, 1965-1973. The Marine Corps formalized sniper training at its Scout Sniper School, establishing rigorous selection standards, extended training programs, and systematic integration with infantry operations. The Army developed similar programs, though with less consistency across units. By Vietnam, American sniper doctrine had matured into a sophisticated framework encompassing advanced optics, specialized ammunition, dedicated training, and psychological preparation. The human cost, analyzing targeted elimination. The ethical dimensions of sniper operations have generated debate within military, philosophical, and legal communities since the practice became systematized in the early 20th century. Sniping differs qualitatively from other forms of combat killing in its deliberation and personalization. A soldier firing a rifle in a firefight operates under immediate threat, with limited time for reflection. An artillery crew firing on map coordinates does not observe individual targets. A bomber crew releases ordnance from altitude, distant from the human consequences. A sniper, by contrast, observes a specific individual, decides to kill that individual, executes the killing, and witnesses the result. This sequence creates moral and psychological conditions absent from other combat modalities. International humanitarian law, codified in the Geneva Conventions and later protocols, distinguishes between lawful and unlawful combatant actions. Snipers operating against military targets, enemy combatants, command personnel, technical specialists, engage in lawful combat. Targeting non-combatants, medical personnel, or surrendering individuals constitutes a war crime. American sniper doctrine in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam emphasized adherence to these legal standards, though enforcement and compliance varied. Carter's documented targets, German officers and military personnel in combat zones, fell unambiguously within lawful engagement parameters. The ethical debate extends beyond legal compliance to questions of moral justification. Philosopher Michael Walzer, in his influential work Just and Unjust Wars, 1977, addresses targeted killing in warfare. Walzer argues that the moral permissibility of killing in war depends on several factors: the justness of the war itself, the combatant status of the target, the proportionality of the means used, and the discrimination between combatants and non-combatants. By these criteria, Carter's actions appear morally defensible. He fought in a widely recognized just war against Nazi Germany, targeted military personnel, used proportional means, and exercised discrimination in target selection. However, Walzer also notes that even justified wartime killing imposes moral costs on those who perform it. He writes, "The soldier who kills, even justly, bears a moral burden. He has taken a human life, an act of ultimate seriousness, and while he may be legally and morally exonerated, he is not morally untouched." This observation aligns with the empirical evidence regarding psychological outcomes among snipers. Legal and moral justification does not eliminate psychological cost. The concept of moral injury, distinct from PTSD, has gained prominence in contemporary military psychology. Moral injury occurs when individuals perpetrate, witness, or fail to prevent actions that violate their core moral beliefs, even when those actions are necessary and justified. Psychiatrist Jonathan Shea, who worked extensively with Vietnam veterans, identified moral injury as a central component of combat trauma. In his book Achilles in Vietnam, 1994, Shea argues that moral injury stems not from fear or threat, but from betrayal of what's right, including the betrayal of requiring soldiers to kill other human beings, even when that killing is just and necessary. Carter's post-war struggles, persistent anxiety, employment instability, social withdrawal, exhibit characteristics consistent with both PTSD and moral injury. His statement, "I remember their faces, all of them. I don't think that ever goes away," suggests enduring psychological impact, rooted not solely in trauma, but in the moral weight of his actions. This observation does not diminish the justness of his service. Rather, it acknowledges the human cost of requiring individuals to perform morally and psychologically burdensome tasks on behalf of collective security. Legacy and reflection. William J. Carter died on November 3, 1982 in Harlan, Kentucky, at the age of 64. The cause of death was myocardial infarction, heart attack, complicated by chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, likely related to decades of smoking. He was buried with military honors at a small cemetery outside Harlan. The ceremony included a 3-volley salute, the playing of taps, and the presentation of a folded American flag to his widow. Approximately 40 people attended, including family, friends, and several fellow World War II veterans from the 28th Infantry Division. Carter's obituary in the local newspaper noted his military service, but provided no details regarding his specific role or achievements. The obituary described him as a quiet man who loved his family and his country. This reticence reflected Carter's own reluctance to discuss his wartime experiences, a reluctance common among combat veterans of his generation, who often viewed their service as duty performed rather than achievement to be celebrated. Carter's military records, declassified and made available to researchers in the 1990s, provide a more complete picture of his contributions. The 23 confirmed kills he achieved, while modest compared to legendary snipers, represented significant tactical impact within his operational context. Each elimination disrupted German command structures, delayed defensive responses, and potentially saved American lives by degrading enemy effectiveness. The cumulative effect of such operations, multiplied across hundreds of American, British, and Soviet snipers, contributed meaningfully to Allied victory, though quantifying that contribution remains methodologically challenging. The broader legacy of World War II sniper operations extends into contemporary military practice. Modern American sniper doctrine, as employed in Iraq and Afghanistan, reflects lessons learned across 70 years of refinement. Contemporary snipers benefit from advanced optics, precision ammunition, sophisticated training, and, critically, psychological support infrastructure designed to mitigate the mental health consequences of sustained combat exposure. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper Program, Army Sniper School, and other specialized training institutions emphasize not only technical proficiency, but also psychological preparation and post-deployment support. The technical evolution has been dramatic. Carter's Springfield M1903A4 with 2.5x magnification has been superseded by systems such as the M2010 Enhanced Sniper Rifle chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum, equipped with variable power scopes offering up to 25x magnification, laser rangefinders, ballistic computers, and night vision capabilities. Effective engagement ranges have extended from 800 meters to beyond 1,500 meters for standard operations, with specialized systems capable of accurate fire beyond 2,000 meters. These technological advances have transformed sniper operations from close-range, relatively crude precision fire into long-range, scientifically calculated elimination of high-value targets. Yet the fundamental human element remains unchanged. A sniper still observes an individual human being through magnified optics. The sniper still makes a deliberate decision to end that person's life. The sniper still witnesses the consequence of that decision. Technology can extend range, improve accuracy, and enhance survivability, but it cannot eliminate the moral and psychological dimensions inherent in personalized killing. The question of whether societies should ask individuals to perform this role, and what obligations those societies owe to individuals who accept that burden, remains unresolved. Carter received a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and a modest disability pension. He received no systematic psychological care tailored to the specific challenges of sniper operations. He struggled with employment, relationships, and mental health for nearly 4 decades after his combat service ended. His experience was not unique. It typified the post-war trajectories of thousands of combat veterans who bore physical and psychological scars that civilian society neither fully understood nor adequately addressed. In the context of World War II, a conflict widely regarded as a necessary war against existential threats posed by Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, the moral justification for combat operations, including sniper operations, appears robust. Carter fought for defensible principles, the defeat of totalitarianism, the liberation of occupied peoples, the restoration of international order. His methods conformed to legal and ethical standards governing warfare. His service contributed to Allied victory and the eventual establishment of a more stable international system. Don't forget to follow the channel and like the video. Yet acknowledging the justness of the war and the propriety of Carter's conduct does not erase the cost he paid. Military service, particularly combat service in demanding roles, extracts prices that extend far beyond physical wounds. Carter's story illustrates this enduring truth. Victory in war is measured not only in territory gained, enemies defeated, and strategic objectives achieved, but also in the lives forever altered by the experience of organized violence. The ghost that haunted William Carter was not the specter of his enemies, though their faces remained with him, but the ghost of the young man he had been before the war, before the Hürtgen Forest, before 23 deliberate acts of killing that were simultaneously necessary, justified, and unbearably heavy. That ghost followed him through 37 years of peace, a silent companion who appeared in sleepless nights, in the hypervigilance that never fully subsided, in the quiet moments when memory ambushed present consciousness. On his gravestone in Harlan County, beneath his name and dates of birth and death, appears a simple inscription: Staff Sergeant, U.S. Army, World War II, duty honored. The inscription captures both the nobility and the tragedy of his service. Duty performed with courage and skill, honored by a grateful nation, yet purchased at a price that statistics cannot measure and ceremonies cannot fully acknowledge. William Carter did what his country asked of him. He did it well, and it cost him the rest of his life.